Good morning. My name is John Stroup, and I'm a Virgin's representative to the board. The board presented this information on December 8th, 2020, but due to a glitch in the Zoom recording, I'm going to re-record using the same slides and the same script. This presentation explains our district's long-term fiscal challenges and presents the options recommended to us in an 86-page report from the New England School Development Council, and we'll refer to it from now on as NESDEC. We are going to do our best to keep it interesting and concise. I encourage everyone to take a look at the full study, which is on the district website. In June 2020, the New England School Development Council conducted a demographic and facilities study for the Addison Northwest School District. Our neighbors, the Mount Abraham Unified School District, did the same. NESDEC presented their findings to the school board on September 14th, 2020. Your school board arranged this study to aid in our collective decision-making about short and long-range district facilities planning. The NESDEC study serves as a starting point for deeper analysis, for board and community discussions, and for future planning to provide education to children in our region. The study has 4 sections: a demographic information section, an enrollment projection section, a capacity analysis of our buildings, and the facilities options presented for our consideration. The NESDEC team analyzed district and municipal records, as well as data from town officials and local realtors. Their team analyzed present and planned school programs and the facilities needed to provide those programs. The team also conducted remote site visits with administrators in each school. They studied school documents, including goals, curriculum, and program information. Lastly, although the study did not include a capital assessment, the NESDEC team did review facility maintenance records and capital improvement needs. The culmination of this study is the options for consideration. The NESDEC team used its analysis of enrollment projections, instructional programming, and the facility's capacity to develop potential facilities options for long-range facilities planning. The team also presented advantages and challenges for each of these options. It is important to emphasize that this study is by no means an end product, but rather a beginning point for future discussions and planning. I'm now on slide 4. These next slides show the district's demographics and enrollment trends. This slide shows that the decline in school population here in the ANWSD is aligned with the broader continuing decline expected in all of New England. Looking forward to 2028, the U.S. Department of Education anticipates a 3.7% decrease in the Northeast. As you can see, all of New England is declining, with Vermont's projected enrollment to decline by about 9%, or about 8,000 fewer students by 2028. Next slide, please. This slide shows the population of the ANWSD's member towns based on estimates from the U.S. Census Bureau through 2019. Overall, our district's total population has declined by 132 people since 2010, and overall, the state of Vermont has declined by 1,752 people. It is worth noting that on the national level, the baby boomer generation is turning 65 years of age at the rate of 10,000 per day. This rate is projected to continue for the next 9 years. The millennial generation born between 1980 and 1998 have been slow to marry, to purchase single homes, and to have children. Many in this age group have high college debt, however, as they approach their late 30s. Given this debt and other factors, this generation is just beginning to buy single-family homes and start families. Slide 6, please. In this next slide, the study forecasts enrollments specifically for the ANWSD based on the effect of several factors: student migration, housing growth and the overall volume of real estate sales, changes in school programs, They also examined birth rates as well as student transfers and dropouts. I'm now on slide 7. This slide shows the ANWSD's historical enrollment data from 2005 to 2021. This information was updated by NESDEC in October. It's really hard to read, so I'm just going to provide an overview and ask you to consider looking at the full report on your own. However, in the second column of the top table, there's a column labeled births. Please note that birth rates in the ANWSD went from a yearly average of 90 in the middle 2000s to an average of about 70 in more recent years. Since 2013, the average birth rate per year is at 68. Please take a look at the bottom right table labeled historical percentage changes. That table shows year over year and cumulative enrollment changes from 2010 to 2021. Please look at the very bottom row. Since 2010, the ANWSD has decreased enrollment by about 27%, which equals to 302 less students for grades K through 12. Slide 8, please. This is a graph that illustrates that decrease in the historical enrollment numbers from 2010 through 2020 for grades K through 12. In terms of student population, this district educated 1,131 students in 2010, and we now educate 829 students. Slide 9. This slide shows the ANWSD projected enrollment from 2015 through 2031. Again, it's hard to read, so please see the full report. First, look at the column labeled births in the top graph. Please note that birth rates are expected to level off, averaging about 69 per year. However, there's a giant caveat about these birth rates that we expect. The NESDEC people presented information that showed that when a major stressful event occurs, like a war or recession, that birth rates decrease. One only needs to look at the decline in the birth rates from the Great Recession in 2008 and 2010. We don't know what effect this pandemic will have on birth rates, but it's likely to decrease them further. Now take a look at the bottom right table labeled projected percentage changes. Using data from actual births, we expect to lose another 104 students in grades K through 12. This represents another 13.1% decrease. Below the green line are projections that do not involve data from actual births. In those years from 2026 to 2031, the NESDEC team expects enrollment projections to level off, with another loss of about 20 students over those 5 years, which amounts to another 2.8% decrease. Slide 10, please. This graph illustrates the district's projected enrollment figures for grades K through 12 from 2020 through 2030, starting with 829 students in 2020 and resulting in about 705 students by 2030. You can see expected district level enrollments in the low 700s as we go forward. Slide 11. This slide puts both historical and projected enrollments together, and as you can see, the NESDEC team expects that beginning around 2025, enrollments will finally begin to level off. Slide 12. One note about housing starts. The next slide shows housing permit data provided to HUD, to the NESDEC team for this study about the district's municipalities. In the table, you can see the total number of one-unit single-family as well as multifamily permits in 2005, and then in more recent years since 2015. The average single and multifamily building permits granted from 2005 to 2020 was about 20 per year. Slide 13. This slide details, details about specific school buildings are located in the NESDEC full report. However, it's important to note that the NESDEC team conducted their analysis using the lens of educating students in the 21st century. In other words, they considered more than just the square footage of each building. School principals were consulted and each room was counted. The study took into account current and future planned operating capacity for each building. Specifically, they considered class size minimum and maximums, current building usage, including identifying any structural deficiencies, future planning construction needs that would correct any of those deficiencies and maintain programs. They looked at how to provide appropriate core instructional spaces as well as specialized facility usages such as lunch and physical education. They compared buildings to provide equitable educational opportunities, and they made their analysis using current code requirements. It is worth noting that this study did not identify how to reconfigure space with or without major renovation costs. Now we're on slide 14. And what you'll hear and see is as close to the language of the NESDEC report authors as possible. Please do take note of the ways that the options differ from one another. This slide shows considerations for building and grade level changes within the ANWSD. Option number 1 considers closing Addison Central School and moving the alternative education program to the middle high school building. The grade level alignment for option 1 would be grades pre-K through 6 at Ferrisburg Central School, grades K through 6 at the Virgins Union Elementary School, grades 7 through 12 at the Virgins Union High School, and it would include the alternative program. Option number 2 considers closing 2 elementary school buildings, moving grade 5 through 6 and the alternative education program to the middle high school building. The alignment for option 2 would be grades pre-K through 4 at one elementary school, grades 5 through 12 at the Virgins Union High School would include the alternative program. Option number 3 considers closing Addison Central School and reconfiguring grades among the other 2 elementary schools, moving grades 5 and 6 and the alternative program to the middle high school building. The district central office is also considered in this option. The grade level alignment for option 3 would be grades pre-K and the district central office at one elementary school, grades K through 4 at one elementary school, and grades 5 through 12 at Virgins Union High School, and it would include the alternative program. I'm on slide 15. We know that there are advantages and disadvantages for these internal options. Some of the advantages are that there is potential for the vacated elementary school facilities to be utilized by collaborative programs or by municipal and/or civic organizations. It's also possible to move the district office into one of those vacated elementary buildings. There are operational savings to be found in all 3 options. There is potential to increase our support for special education programming by coordinating within fewer school buildings. For option 2 and 3, we will see more consistent elementary class sizes and can facilitate greater collaboration among grade level educators. There are some challenges as well. There may be some associated costs to reconfigure spaces if that's needed. We need to ensure that there's sufficient space and staff at the middle and high school to accommodate grades 5 and 6 programming needs, especially in specialized areas such as art, music, and school nurses. We may need to restructure or expand some transportation routes, and we need to consider congestion, especially at drop-off and pickup times. On slide 16 now. This next slide now considers some of the options that would require merging our district with the Mount Abraham Unified School District. It's important to note before I go forward that these options only combine grades at the middle and high school levels. At this point, we do not have any options before us that would combine students across the 2 districts' elementary schools. Option A has us consider the closure of 1 or 2 elementary buildings, Addison Central School and 1 other, depending upon the grade levels at a regionalized middle high school building. In this option, we will consider with our neighbors in the Mount Abe district to close one of the currently open middle high school buildings, either VUHS or Mount Abe, and reassign all middle and high school students to a regional middle high school at one of these two buildings. So the grade level alignment for option A would be grades pre-K through 6 at one or two of the current ANWSD elementary schools, and then a grade 7 through 12 at a single regionalized middle or high school, again, either at the current VUHS or Mount Abe buildings. The ANWSD alternative program would be housed there as well. Option B has us again consider the closure of one or two elementary buildings. This option and option C has us combine all middle and high school grades for both districts into two separate buildings, one of which would be a middle school and the other would be a high school. The grade level alignment for option B would be grades pre-K through 5 at one or two elementary schools, grades 6 through 8 at either the Virgins or the Mount Abe middle school and high school building, grades 9 through 12 at either the Virgins or the Mount Abe middle or high school buildings. The ANWSD alternative program would be housed there as well. Option C is identical to option B, except that the grade level configuration for middle school would include the 5th grade. Again, we would consider the closure of one or two elementary buildings as well as combining all middle and high school grades into two separate buildings. So the grade level alignment for option C would be grades pre-K through 4 at one or two elementary schools, grades 5 through 8 at the Virgins or the Mount Abe building. Grades 9 through 12 would again be either at Virgins High or at the current Mount Abe High School buildings. So I'm on slide 17. Again, we know some advantages and disadvantages for these options. Some of the advantages would include any closed building could be utilized by a collaborative program or a municipal or civic organization. There will be operational savings. There is potential to increase support for special education programming. The grade span configurations, including at the middle and high school, affords more consistent class sizes and greater collaboration among grade level educators. And combining either grades 5 through 8 or grades 6 through 8 across the districts in options B or C provides a structure for a broad middle school model. We know there are some challenges. We will have to determine a location for middle school or high school. There may be potential costs associated with additions for elementary and middle high schools. For options with a separate middle school, we would see student transitions between buildings go from 2 to 3. We will need to ensure that the elementary and high school sites can support additional students, especially for specialized areas. Again, we'll need to address transportation routes, and we will need to consider possible congestion issues. Any combined middle and high school will need to consider class size minimums, classrooms available for prep periods, offerings for electives, and minimally enrolled classes like AP classes and technology offerings. Again, these options provide a starting point. Some of the options we have good financial data for and a clear picture of the costs and benefits. This is especially true for the internal ANWSD configurations. For the combined options with MAUSD, we've only started to investigate these possibilities. You can find all of these options spelled out in greater detail in the actual NESDEC report. So now I'm going to talk about our process for further study on slide 18. Before I talk about our next steps, I'd like to remind you that we know that there's a lot to comprehend here, so please reach out to us with questions and know that the full report is available on the district's website. So what's next? The NESDEC study is a compilation of data and considerations regarding the future of education in our region. It's a jumping off point for community conversations and for the development of a long-range facilities plan and for future planning for our children and the citizens in our 5 towns and possibly beyond. That is why we are presenting this information. Any changes we would make internally within the ANWSD would be guided by our district's policies, as well as our articles of agreement. In moving forward to further investigate combined facilities operations with the Mount Abraham Unified School District, the board of both districts would need to form a study committee composed of a variety of stakeholders from all 10 towns in order to gather information and work together to examine if this route would be a viable option. If a viable option was favorable, the committee and/or school boards could warn a vote in both school districts. Ultimately, the majority of the electorate of both districts would need to approve an option in order for a potential merger of both districts to move forward. Thank you for listening. Please let us know if you have further questions.